And what Salesforce has really shifted in those last few years, because we now have huge components of our company that are involved with MuleSoft, with Tableau, with Slack, and they're a big part of the development experience of the wider platform on Salesforce. And what Trailblazer DX is, it's a reinvention of Trailhead DX that includes content from MuleSoft, Slack, Tableau, and is really for us, for builders of stuff on Salesforce. It always used to be the developer conference, and to me, it will always be the developer conference, but it is bigger than that. And it's pretty much a conference for anyone who is building stuff on Salesforce. No sales, no marketing, it's all for us. And it's created by us. Like, our team in developer relations is in charge of TDX. And so, for example, I've been working on the keynote tirelessly for the last few weeks, because that's a big part of what our team gets to control from a demo perspective, from messaging, from all the new products. And we're really lucky to be able to still retain full control over the event and really ensure that it's for our developers and for the builders on Salesforce. Now, like I said, the conference is going to be equally divided up against Salesforce, MuleSoft, Slack, and Tableau to make sure that we have something for everyone, and that it's the go-to developer conference for all of our products that we have as a company. And you're going to see some really interesting ways that we're weaving Slack into Salesforce and MuleSoft into Tableau and all the way around when it comes to the content that we're presenting, to really look at the bigger picture of development and how we can work together with companies to build cool stuff using all of these apps and services. And so if you've never been to TDX before, it's a 2-day conference with over 100 technical and hands-on sessions with workshops and demos. I'm lucky enough to have seen and been one of the judges for the internal CFP, and you will be amazed at the quality of the content that we're going to have at the event. Some of it will be recorded, but a lot of the content will be only on site. One of the great things about these events are the networking opportunities that they provide. I've been in the Salesforce ecosystem for about 10 years now, long before I started working for Salesforce. And it's amazing the amount of connections that I've made over the years just from going to these events and socializing. And I think anyone who's been to one of our conferences can really attest to that. But what's even better about TDX versus something like Dreamforce is that it's not as big, it's much smaller. We're probably looking at about 5,000 attendees at the moment. And what's always been great about TDX is that it's on a single floor in Moscone. There aren't a lot of places to get lost in, and you're constantly seeing the same people throughout the conference, whereas Dreamforce is so big that you may see someone once, and that's it the entire week. Whereas with TDX, you can meet up, you can talk about what you've just learned, you can arrange to go to things with people because they're all in that same environment, in that same room with you. There will be a concert as always. I unfortunately do not know who's going to be performing it, but that's always an added benefit and a lot of fun. I wish I did know. And there's going to be lots of opportunities to give back with Salesforce.org and to the local nonprofit communities. The campground is very cool this year. We've managed to secure areas for all of our products. There's a really cool Slack area with a theater. There's going to be a developer theater, an admin theater, and an architect theater for you to go and watch the theater sessions, along with product demos from all of our product leaders. Like I said earlier, what's really cool about TDX is that it's driven by our product teams and the product managers. So when you go to a demo booth, you're not going to be meeting with someone who kind of knows the product a little bit. You're going to be meeting with one of the PMs or one of the engineers on that product. And it gets you really good face time with those engineering teams. And we're also going to be bringing back campfires that we've seen really successful at Dreamforce in New York and at the little Dreamforce that we had last year, where we're going to have smaller, more intimate sessions where you can have discussions and panels with a lot of product leaders, with some community members, and really engage. I'm working on a campfire at the moment with someone in the community around Salesforce functions and how they're solving issues with their organization using functions. And it's little things like that where everyone will be able to stay around and have Q&A afterwards. And a surprise, sneak peek, Parker is going to be hosting the keynote. And so the keynote is something that I've been working on probably for about a month now. Day and night, it's the only thing that I'm working on, and will be working on until TDX. And we've got a really exciting lineup. Having Parker host the keynote, we've got some really cool new products that you'll have never heard of before, some that will be even going into beta in GA in the summer, that we're going to get to show off from all of our products. And we're really going to show that story of automation through Slack, MuleSoft, Tableau, and Salesforce, and how all of these products can work together to create really great user experiences. On top of the main keynote, we're also going to have super sessions or smaller keynotes for admins, for developers, for MuleSoft, Slack, Tableau, and marketing. And so even if you want to go ahead and like double click and zoom in on some of those core technologies, like the developer keynote obviously is going to be one of the most popular, we're going to be offering those opportunities as well to see those sessions. When it comes to pricing, there is a boot camp a few days before TDX, so starting on the 23rd, that includes a couple of certification opportunities. So if that's something, if your company has an education budget and they can send you, the boot camps are fantastic for that, because you can get hands-on, learn in a classroom, network, and be able to take your certifications there. And there's going to be about 650 attendees there. And we also have just the passes for TDX available. They are still on sale. If you register, I think by the 26th now is the date. It's been a change since we made these slides. Based on when you register is the pricing. And then we are going to be streaming some of it online. The keynote will be streamed. I'm not sure about the super sessions, and some of the breakouts will be streamed, but a lot of the content will be in person only, unfortunately. And that's it. So if you're interested, you can register at trailblazerdx.com. But it's going to be super exciting, and hopefully get to meet some of you there while I'm running around trying to do things and fix things.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Stephen. That's pretty, yeah, we really want to get back and see people in person, all the sessions, and it's always great experience.
Cool.
So if anyone has any questions to Stephen, we can talk about those. But definitely it's a good opportunity to attend these events and learn more.
Yeah, very much so. I can't wait. I'm really, really excited. I went to Dreamforce, so I got to present the keynote for developers at Dreamforce in the end of the year. It was very small, about 1,500 people, and it just wasn't the same. So I'm looking forward to TDX being back in that feeling.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. Well, thank you very much for having me. Unfortunately, I will have to run to my in-person meeting, although I wish I was staying for the session, because my life at the moment in working with the TDX keynote and a couple of other things is the event relays between Salesforce and Amazon Web Services that we kind of announced last year. It's in pilot now. There's a great blog on the website, but so I've been figuring out all the different ways that you can integrate platform events with AWS that are really cool. Some great stuff coming at TDX.
Forward.
Sure. So yeah, Stephen, if you want to hop on, thank you very much again, having you here, and probably we'll catch up in Trailblazer DX.
Yep, see you at TDX.
Yeah.
Come on.
Thanks. All right, so I guess we can start, Narendar, with your session. Yeah, we have pretty much more than 50 people signed up, but it's always less than 20 people online, so we can get started. So I'll be recording this, and again, we'll be posting this on event page later.
It's good. So let me start by sharing my screen. Hopefully you should guys able to see it.
Yeah, I can see your slides.
All right, sounds good. So let's get in straight. Yeah, so hi guys, my name is Narendar Singh, and today I'm gonna host a talk with you guys, which is about async automation using platform events. In this session, we will be discussing what is the current or general landscape or the architecture around automation that we see in Salesforce, and what are the disadvantages associated with it, and how we can use platform events to work around those disadvantages and use these platform events to make our org automation more efficient and possibly more scalable. So a quick introduction. I'm a Salesforce developer at Sales5 consulting company. I'm a 3x MVP. I also blog stuff at forcepanda.com. I'm a big flow advocate. I've been working or getting my hands dirty with flows ever since the cloud flow designer was announced. So yeah, I have a lot of things I have built on flows, and yeah, I'm a 3x ranger. These are my Twitter and LinkedIn handles. Feel free to reach out. I'll be more than happy to engage in a conversation. All right, so let's basically begin with a term which is called event-driven software architecture. And now for admins, if this may seem like too much, but I'm just going to I'll try and give you a basic gist of how event-driven software architecture works, because your platform events are totally based on this architecture. And we will see what are the different naming conventions around it, and what are the different types of events, what is an event bus, and all that stuff. So it's, to put it in a very layman language, it's just like I say something and you hear something. You can choose to not listen to it if you want. It's as simple as that. So yeah, now, but if we talk about specifics, event-driven architecture has been in the ecosystem, not the Salesforce ecosystem, but it's a very generic term in the software development industry. And it basically lets you listen, fires. It's basically a broadcast mechanism where you just broadcast something and you have listeners, active listeners listening to those events, and they, based on the event, you send some information, and if someone wants to use that information, they can. So the whole architecture comprises of an event bus. You can consider it as a carrier where all the events are being where all the events reside or being published to. It's like a channel, or you can call it a channel, but yeah, this is where all the events are, and this is where all the events get listened to from. And if you can see publishers, publishers are basically entities which creates the event, fires the event. There are different nomenclatures for it. You can call it fire, you can say create, but yeah, in general, we say fire event is more used in event-driven architecture. And then we have consumers. Consumers are basically subscribers. These entities are those entities which listen to these events, which are available on the event bus. I'm not going to go into too much detail of these events and what are the things associated with them, because I don't want to overwhelm people who are new to the ecosystem or not very well versed with the development side of Salesforce. Yeah, and then there are different events. So we have something called streaming API in Salesforce, and there are different events, also known as streaming events. So push topic, generic events, platform events, and change data capture. So all of these events are basically built on same underlying technology. And all these events have their different set of advantages and disadvantages. Push topics and generic events are more you can now call them legacy events, so to say, because they are pretty much not being used for anything. And platform events and change data capture are the new events, which mostly you will see a lot of work being done around. I do see there are some specific advantages, scenario specific advantages of possibly using a push topic event and generic events, but in general, these two are not really used. Mostly what you will see is platform events being used, or CDC if you want. CDC, just to let you know, is very specific to listening to the changes that happen on the event. However, platform events are more like an object, and we will discuss how a platform event looks, how we can create it, how we can use them. All right. Yeah, so publisher and subscribers, and if we talk about how who all can actually publish an event, or who all can actually subscribe an event, or let's say in since our specific talk is about platform events, whatever we will discuss, we will try to restrict it to platform events. So Apex trigger, flows, process builder, lightning components, and external system. So you can all of these automation features, or basically entities, can act as a publisher and as well as a subscriber. So you can fire platform events off or listen to using Apex trigger, flows, process builder, lightning components, external system. Lightning component, using lightning components, you can use EMP API based component, which allows you to listen to or subscribe to the event channel. And in external systems, the general method that is generally used is command D, which is the widely known library to use to listen to events. So let's take up an example and look at how the general automation architecture is around Salesforce. So let's say, imagine we have an opportunity. We have an automation in place which says when an opportunity stage is updated to stage negotiation, we want to create a task for a client care manager. And client care manager is simply a lookup to the user object on the opportunity object. Now, this is a fairly straightforward example, and this will give us a decent idea of how we can use platform events to actually decouple this whole automation. But let's see how, in general, how we would build this, or you might see this in a lot of orgs. So a user clicks or updates the opportunity. You have an automation, which will most likely be a flow, hopefully not process builder if you are creating something new, because as you might already know, process builder is going away soon. So yeah, so you will have a flow which will see if the opportunity is updated. It will create a task for your client care manager, and as soon as this whole cycle or the whole transaction is finished, the page refreshes and the control goes back to the user. So just to give you a number, this generally takes around 200 milliseconds, more or less. This is just an average of calculation that I did in a fresh developer edition org. So yeah, so this is very general automation that you will see, where everything happens in a single transaction. So anything that happens in Salesforce is a transactional unit. So and basically, to define a transaction, it's just a set of commands that are being run synchronously, one after the other. And yeah, it's like a sequential execution. It's not a parallel execution. It's a sequential execution of those commands. So, and in other terms, what we call it as is synchronous processes. So yeah, so this is a typical synchronous process setup, which you will see in a lot of orgs for a lot of automation that you do in Salesforce. And there are some pros and cons associated with it. For example, synchronous, the general automation architecture, you will see it's synchronous, which is, in other words, a single transaction. Let's say what this essentially means is that if something fails, the whole transactions get rolled back. So imagine you have 10 steps, create an account, update a opportunity, blah, blah, blah. So if at the end of the transaction something fails, everything gets rolled back to its initial state and nothing gets committed in the database. So this is what how a single transaction or a synchronous transaction means. And another characteristic of this kind of automation is it's coupled. So basically all the pieces, as we discussed, it's a sequential execution of commands. So it's tightly coupled, and a command or a piece of logic cannot run independent of whether the previous or the next command is going to execute. It actually waits for the previous commands to finish and get the control or get called over by the previous command. And it's slower. Obviously, let's imagine if you say, if you have a lot of steps in a single transaction happening, you will see that it takes time. Imagine now if you can take a piece of that logic from that automation cycle and say this logic can run independently of this whole execution, then why not? Because you would save a lot of time and your system will be more faster, and it will process things faster. And things your users don't want to see happening in real time can simply be taken and put out or sent or processed asynchronously, in other words. So yeah, so what are the options to go asynchronous for us? There are a lot of options. You can write code. In code, you have queuable classes, you have future methods, you have scheduler classes, and you have batch classes, obviously. But on the low code side of things, you have flows, and that's pretty much it. And in the flows, you have this pause element, which you can use if your flow is a auto launched flow, and if you are using record triggered flows, you have a feature called schedule paths, where you can say when you want to execute a piece of logic asynchronously. It can be 0 hours from now, it can be 4 hours from now, 7 days from now, based on whatever the business requirement is. Now there is another way to do this, and we will see how we can leverage platform events here. Generally speaking, platform events are traditionally have been used mostly for integrations, where they want to communicate with the external system and or the information has to be shared back and forth between two systems, one being Salesforce and the other can be in any external system. But we can use platform events internally in our org as well, because why not? They are amazing. And that's what I'll try to show you how we can do this. So this decoupled automation architecture is built on platform events. And if you can see, if we go through the process, the user updates the opportunity. And what our automation does is it creates a platform event. And then simply the synchronous execution cycle is complete. And what happens is we have a listener which actually listens to this platform event, and it fires an automation which creates the task. So what happens is the creation of task happens asynchronously, independent of the current execution or the current transaction that is happening associated with the stage update of opportunity. So what you see here is you actually reduce the time from 200 milliseconds to 770 milliseconds. Again, these numbers can vary based on the whole automation logic you have placed around your object. So yeah, it can vary a lot, but yeah, this is just to give you a perspective that it can be a lot faster if you design or decouple your automation. So let's quickly see what are the characteristics of a decoupled automation. It's asynchronous, obviously, right? And it's decoupled. And the best thing about these decoupled automation architecture is that it's faster and you have a little more control, and also it's easy on governance. So every transaction that happens in Salesforce, there are some governor limits that has to be there or has to be followed, and they cannot be broken, or it's basically a hard limit. Some of them are soft, but yeah, it's a limit which cannot be crossed, so that the multi-tenancy architecture, basically it gives the shared there to ensure the, let's say, to ensure the fair distribution of resources on a multi-tenant architecture. We have this. So yeah, every transaction that happens, it has its own set of limits. So when you have one transaction and you create a platform event, the platform event listener processes the logic. So that logic that gets processed is happening in a separate transaction. So the transaction has its own set of limits. So there you have a lot more that you can do. For example, if you want to do a lot of queries, a lot of TMLs, so you have that added flexibility in your automation. Yeah, these are the last two are the primary or the highlight of decoupled automation architecture, which gives a lot of plus points to using this architecture. But we will see how, where, and how to use it, some best practices, and all that stuff. But quickly, let's take a look how we can actually create a platform event, how we can use this in the org, and we will use the same use case that we just talked about, so that you have an idea how you can set this up if you are an admin or very new to platform events. So I'm gonna switch my screen. So I already have a flow which basically runs. Let's see what's the criteria is. So the flow runs when a record is updated and the stage name is changed to review. I'm not using the is changed filter because I'm using this condition, which is very similar to workflow rules if you have worked with this. So it basically means that, in a nutshell, if the stage is updated to negotiation review, fire this flow. That's pretty much it. And what it does is, since we are creating a task, so we will create a after save flow, or let's say actions and related records, just another name for after save flows. And we are done. And what we simply do here is we create a task. So let's quickly take a look. So I have a task where we set the subject, we set the owner, and we might also want to say set the related ID as the record ID, so that the task is associated with the opportunity. So that's pretty much it. Yeah. And that's how you design your normal automation in your daily life. If we save this, we can activate this and also do a quick test around this. Till the time, let's say, let's activate this. And just in case, if you have any questions, feel free to unmute yourself or put your questions in the chat, and I'll be more than happy to answer your questions as we go along. So let's create a new opportunity. Close date, 19, name, MA, image. Let's just set this to prospecting. We don't need other fields. We actually do need the client care manager, or otherwise the logic won't work. So let's set the client care manager as well. I think we only have one user, which is our user. And if in case you're wondering what is user, it's a scratch org that I'm using. So that's why the user is actually named as user. So yeah, it will basically assign the task to myself. But in general, it will most likely be another user if you want to have a manager. So yeah. So if we go here, we refresh. Okay, there is no task because oh yeah, we have to update the opportunity stage, right? So we refresh the opportunity stage, everything refreshes, and the task is here, right? But what now? This is a very typical way of implementing your automation in the org, but let's make it bit more enhanced and bit more efficient. So we go to setup and we search for platform events. Only if the page could load. Okay. So this is how you create a platform event. You simply come here and say, create a new platform event. You give it a relevant name. So let's just say task creation. And then now this is something you have to understand what it means. So publish behavior. So publish basically means create in other terms. And it has two options, publish immediately and publish after commit. So what this means is if you say, for example, if you in between a transaction, if you fire a platform event, and if the publish behavior is set to publish after commit, it will only fire after the successful, if the transaction has successfully completed, the platform event only fires then, not before that. But if you set the publish behavior as publish immediately, what's going to happen is the moment you fire your platform event in your automation logic, it's going to fire immediately without concerning the uh, state of your current transaction being completed or failing. So yeah, this typically is useful when you want to log errors at specific times, or there are other use cases as well, especially related to integrations and all. So yeah, but in general, in an automation, when you are designing your automation, you should most likely use publish after commit for most of your automation, unless you have a very specific use case. So we hit save, and it takes some time, which is weird. Normally it does not. All right, so this UI might look very familiar to you. Some details, standard field, custom fields, triggers, and subscription may not be, yes. But anyways, this is a very typical set of an object detail page. So yeah, essentially platform event is a different type of object, not a very standard object that we have in Salesforce. So uh, platform event, if you look at the API name, the name is has a suffix __ e, which basically denotes that this is a platform event. And then the platform events has some standard fields. These are not really for your use, because they are relay ID and event UUID are specific to the event. And you don't have to use them, and unless you are a developer who is writing integrations or listening to the events after some time. So yeah, And the best part, custom fields. So if you now what you can do is you can have custom fields on your platform event. So it's basically like defining the schema of your data table, if you speak in a general database language. And you can set the field type. There is a restriction of what you can't do rich text or fields like pick list. So yeah, you are restricted to checkbox, date, time, number, text. For our use case, we only need text. Basically, we will send the subject here, length 255, always require, save. And what we also need is the owner ID, which is going to be, in this case, the client care manager user ID. So let's call it owner ID required. Save.
So Narendra, this is a schema where when the event fires, it carries the data in that schema, right?
Absolutely. So
Okay.
we will see how we can set up when we're creating the event, how we set the values of these fields and how we receive these values when we are listening to the event. So you can have triggers on platform events, but you can also have process builder and flows. Since process builder is basically gone now, so we will only limit our discussion to flows. So this our first step is complete, which is to create a platform event. Now what we have to do is we have to create a flow which actually listens to this platform event. So we will search for flows and go here. And by the way, you can create a number of fields based on what you want to send, what information you want to send on the platform event. So yeah, but for the sake of simplicity, I'm just restricting this to owner and subject. I could have used what ID as well, but for now, maybe it's good that we use so we can immediately see the task on the opportunity when we refresh. So yeah, let's do that as well. Let's say what ID. You don't have to actually specify 255, you can do it to 18, but yeah, we don't need to make this required, but because in a lot of cases you might not have what ID. All right, so the basic setup for the platform event is done. Now what we need is a flow that can listen to this event. So when you create a flow, we will see a UI where we can choose the type of the flow. And one of the type is platform event flows. So yeah, you choose platform event triggered flow. And this is basically a auto launch flow that runs when a platform event is fired. So out of the box, I'm not really a big fan of auto layout, so I'm going to use freeform. So yeah. So now if it asks you, please choose an event. So there you may see a lot of events because a lot of them are standard events that platform fires and you can listen to them. But for now, we are only interested in task creation event. We hit done. Now what we want to do is we want to create a task. So we will say create a task. Choose the task. We want to set the subject. And the value comes from record creation dot subject. So this is how you access a very typical, like you see in your record triggered automation. You have this record variable. Very similar to this, you have this record variable, which is a record of the platform event that was fired from the flow, which we will create after this. So subject is set. We also want to set the what ID. record. Oh, what ID? We also want the owner ID, which is going to be owner ID, and that's basically it. Very simple. So yeah, because our use case is very simple. All right, so that's basically it. We save our flow. Let's call it task creation handler. You can have different naming conventions in your org. So yeah, let's activate this. Now, what we have to do is we have to go back to our flow that we created. And I think we might have this somewhere here. Yeah. Yeah. So what we are going to do is we are going to change this flow, and we will say instead of creating the task, we will create a platform event, and the task will get asynchronously created. So we can delete this and say create records. Now, how do you create a platform event? So like the basic how we create an object, it's very similar to creating an object. So we simply do underscore e. Oh, okay. Task creation. That's strange. Huh. Oh, okay, got it. I didn't refresh this, so that's why. We have to refresh so that it loads the schema and knows that, okay, platform event is their creation. So no auto layout, sorry. Yes. File task creation. The object creation. And here you can set the fields based on whatever values you want. So owner ID should be record client care manager. Your subject should be, let's just get us the deal. What ID should be the record ID itself. So we hit done. We don't need this element. We connect this, and that's basically it. So see, save as. We save, and yes. So yes, so our setup is complete. All we now have to go and test this. So we go here. Let's clone this opportunity and set the stage to prospecting. Hit save. Now, just to make sure you noticed, in previous test when we created when we updated the opportunity, that we automatically we were able to see that the task was created, and just because the whole process was synchronous and the logic was not getting run in the background. But in this case, the situation will be different because the task gets created independently of this transaction. So let's update this. Hopefully everything will work. Quickly, let me check. We have activated this. Yes. Okay, it worked. No task here because it was asynchronous. If we refresh, Yes, we have the task. So everything worked as according to the plan. Only thing was we didn't get the task whenever the page refreshed. So you have to keep in mind while decoupling your automation and structuring the automation this way, because the user will not see the immediate results. If the user is concerned about seeing the immediate results, you might not want to use platform events for something like that. But let's say if you want to update some related records and stuff like that, you can definitely do that, because user will not immediately, most likely don't want to check the related records when they change something on the current record. And in this example as well, if you are creating a task for someone else, you are not concerned, the current user would not really be concerned about what happens. They just update the opportunity, and the other get the task for the other user, which is client care manager for this opportunity, gets notified about the task. All right, so that was basically it for the demo. I'm gonna switch back to my presentation. So now it looks great, yeah, and everything looks great. They are very fast and all that stuff. But what's the catch? All right, so there are a lot of considerations when it comes to platform events, and that might affect your choice of automation as well. So first thing is, obviously we discussed this, a PE transaction runs async. So it runs in the background, it runs asynchronously, independent of the current transaction. So the results are not visible to on the UI after the page refresh. And platform events can be very tricky to debug. And the most obvious reason for this is the running user for the platform event. So let's say when you create a platform event, and when that event is received and the flow is invoked, the running user for that flow is automated process. Unfortunately, this cannot be changed yet, but you can, I would not say hold your breath. I wouldn't say hold your breath, but yeah, possibly we will have this feature, because at the moment we can use or set the running user for Apex triggers who listen to the platform events, but unfortunately not for the flows. And yes, then governor limits consumption. So if you have a lot of integrations in your org, then you might want to check your current org consumptions of these limits specific to the platform event, and then see if your automation is not going to go bizarre and consume a lot of events and eventually hit a limit where you say you can't create more events or listen to them. So yeah, so then requires more planning and time to implement. As you can see, creating the flow, just having the creating a record triggered flow and adding the task as a create element was way more simpler than creating the platform event and then creating another flow. So yes, there are you end up creating two flows and some additional metadata which has to be maintained, but you also know that it comes with certain advantages. So it requires some planning. You have to put some thought if your current use case actually is a good suitable use case to use platform events or not. And then there is a lot more to platform events beneath the surface, because especially when dealing with complex implementations, and mostly in integrations, you will see where you have limits, like you can only send a data of 1 MB from platform event. Your platform event size should not exceed 1 MB size. So yeah, and then some best practices. So especially when you are decoupling your org automation, always select the publish after commit publish behavior, so that they only fire after the transaction is completed. Because if you do this immediately, there may be a chance that your flow fails and yet you create a task for the user. So you don't want that to happen. And then implement extensive error handling. So this is something also very tricky because you cannot use subflows with platform triggered flows, platform event triggered flows. So if just to show you where is the flow. So you don't see the subflow here. Yeah. So I do have a action which you can use, and I'll put the link in the description or in the chat, which is a Apex action, and that lets you call a subflow from the flow. So you can use that as well if you want to have error handling where you have a single flow handling all the errors. So yeah. So use extensive error handling. You can use subflows, and there are a lot of organization or well set up organizations already have their own logging frameworks in place. So you can use them, or you can use Chatter. I have, for example, one of our customers, we created a Chatter group where we posted all the events which were failing. Thankfully, there were very less. So yeah, you can use Chatter, you can use a custom object, but yeah, whichever works best for your org. And then avoid use cases where automated process can cause issues. So for handling, for sending emails, let's say that you have to send an email. If you send the email, the sender's address, if you do not set a address, by default will be the running user's email, which is automated process email. So you have to set the email of the automated process from the process automation settings, and I can show you. But yeah, the point is be aware of all the limits and considerations around automated process user. For example, it's a possibility that you don't want the modified date or created date to be changed by the, you don't want to see the modified user as automated process. You want to see it as someone else. Then it's not a good use case for platform events. So yeah, you can, just to let you know, you can set the user email from here. All right, so let's go back. And yeah, like we already discussed, review your org's current consumption of platform platform event specific governor limits before you actually go on and choose platform event as your solution to decouple your automation, because you can use other ways to decouple your logic as well. But yeah, the thing is, platform event is way more faster than having a flow run asynchronously by using a pause or by using a workflow or scheduled path. Platform events are way faster, way faster. So yeah, that's why that's the advantage you get with platform events. And yeah, that brings to the end of the presentation. So thank you very much. I hope it was a good session and you learned something. And yeah, if you have any questions, feel free to unmute yourself and let's hear it.
Yeah, there are some questions on chat. How many platform events can be created? I think.
All right. So let me go from, let's start from the top.
Yeah, there are only 2 questions here.
Got it. So Manisha says, I'll just read out the question out loud. How many platform events can we create? Are there any limitations? So yes, anything you do in Salesforce has some limits always. So when you create a platform event, there are some limits which are platform event specific, but also you also end up taking a DML. It consumes a DML. So typically, if you want to create platform events, if you have a lot of DMLs for creating platform events, obviously you can't do more than 150. But normally, typically you club them in a collection and then create. And then for 24 hours. I think it's I think 2500 something. It's well written in documents, so you can refer that documentation for the limits. But yes, there is a limit that is there, which says you can only create X number of platform events in a 24-hour rolling window. Then what advantages do platform events have over existing async? uh, yeah, that's a very good question. So platform events, this now that you have flows to leverage platform events, you don't need to write code. So that is a big advantage for you, because to write async functionalities like batch queuable, you have to write code. But with flows being able to listen to platform events, you don't need code, and you have platform events. And then there is no distinct advantage. It really depends. For example, if you just have to say, if you have a class which is firing the platform event, or a trigger, and if you have a trigger which is calling the apex, some queuable, it really depends on the use case. There is no such disadvantage or advantage. It's very use case specific advantages associated with them.
So I have one question, Narendra. In case of like a batch upload, let's say mass update, doing yeah, record update from data load or outside. So how this behavior will be impacted? Is it a good practice? I mean, all the considerations. What's your thoughts on those?
Yes, that's a very good question, because we actually faced one of this issue when we did this. So try not to do a batch mass update when you have automation like this, because there might be a chance where you have a lot of integrations, and when you do a batch update or batch load of data, then you end up firing a lot of events, and there is a chance that you can hit the limit of 24-hour window. And then what you also need to note is platform events at the moment, especially flows. When it comes to flows, they are not really scalable, and there are some known issues around scalability for platform events and flows. So I think they currently run in the batch size of 200 or 2000. I'm not exactly sure, but yeah, they run in the batches of 200 or 2000. But yeah, that's why they have this scalability issue somehow that causes. So typically I would recommend for now to not use platform events where you see a possible data upload. I mean, normally you can do this, but if you see data being uploaded on an object very frequently, or at least to some extent which is recursive, then you should probably not do this.
Okay.
Or not use platform events for that kind of automation.
Yeah, probably we have to skip that during the mass
Yes.
upload. Yeah.
Then I have one more question from Nagesh. Hi Narendra, I noticed that if you have multiple async processes like queuable, future, triggered, record trigger, and if we have a platform event, both of these information, both these different async process work on different child records but related to same parent record. So we are getting lock issue. So this is a very typical issue when you have a lot of automation on a single object. You can't escape this after a point, because someone created something and somebody did something, and they are now causing conflicts. So typically to avoid this situation, you have to build your automation in such a way where you already know prior hand there will be no locking issues. You have to just go through the automation process, all the automations that are there running on that execution cycle or the transaction. And yeah, Does that answer your question, Nagesh?
Yes, Narendra. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, it's I have seen this error in a lot of orgs. It's not a pretty one to have, because it can be any automation which can cause this.
Right.
Okay, we have one more in the chat from Riley. It says, so if you are in contact record triggered flow, you then can't update a system object like user, as it will throw an error. That's right. So could get this around by get an error by creating a platform event that runs and saves the record. Yes, this is a perfect use case where you get this mixed DML error, where you update a user object and a normal S object. In fact, user is also S object, but still they are different somehow. So yes, this is a very good use case, and you can use platform events for this.
And thank you.
All right. If you have any more questions, feel free to write them in the chat or unmute yourself. Not just related to platform events, in automation in general, if you have anything to share, feel free.
So to the Narendra, Nagesh's question, so probably we have to stick to one pattern compared to doing one thing in functions, one thing here and there. So it should stick to one pattern to avoid that error, or it's like a.
So growing up, what I have realized in this ecosystem is that you can't escape complexity no matter what. So at some point, either you have to need to have very strict governance over who is building what, or you simply have resources who are well aware of what they are creating. So in my opinion, personally, I don't really say that you have a single trigger and all that automation. No, for sending an email, I would definitely encourage someone to just create a flow, because writing Apex for creating sending an email is way too much. And it can be easily, you can use easily a flow to do this. So yeah, it's and also you have to see what resources do you have in your organization. That's a different topic, but technically speaking, I do not discourage the use of multiple automations on a single object. It's just how you plan them, that what makes the difference.
Okay. Yeah, that's a good one. Take advantage of whichever works better.
Yes. Plus, maintaining the code is very annoying, because you have to go through the entire development lifecycle. And if you have a CI/CD pipeline in place, then it's like another set of extra overhead, which you probably don't like, but you have to go and adhere to. So, but still, yeah.
That makes sense.
And Narendra, on your email example, right? For example, if you are sending just one single email, I definitely prefer flow. But you are sending multiple emails. For example, if you are mass updating the records, right? Then if you have to send email for every record that gets updated in that transaction, right? Then I think we should prefer programming versus flow, right? Because flows are not yet bulkified, right? So
no, I don't think it will fail, because it should work perfectly in flows, because flows are bulkified. So I have a session actually on this on virtual dreaming, how flows bulkified works. So the way basically it works is in Apex, we create a list and we generate an instance of single email message record and add it to the list. And then we finally say messaging.send email, and then we provide the list of emails, right?
right.
Yeah, so what happens in flows is that for every record, there is a instance of flow which is called flow interview, and there are some bulkifiable elements. So for example, creating the record. So same flow has multiple instances, one for each record. And when this create flow is encountered in process, they are combined. So they are added to a list and executed as one. So it is just one DML happening. So similarly, when it comes to firing an email, what happens is it clubs all the email actions, adds them to a list. I mean, this is very specific to how happens in the background, but it more or less is the same funda. Yeah.
Okay.
So it combines in the list and sends it as one.
Okay, so you're saying that from the user perspective, they think that flow is, working in each of. Sorry, I mean to say that there is one instance of flow working on each of these records, let's say
Yes.
200 records, right, inserted into the tree, right?
So
But I
if you
think you're saying Salesforce behind the scenes combines all these instances. Okay,
That's correct.
okay.
That's correct. So if you have 200 records that you are updating, there will be 200 instances of the flow running in parallel for those 200 records.
Okay, but sometimes I think, of course, it depends on what you're doing inside the flow. Oh, we are encountering CPU errors as well, like CPU timeouts.
Yeah, so this is another error. So CPU error, it depends if you have a large collection of, if you are looping over collection. Flows are not suitable, in my opinion, for handling collections, or they are not sufficient or efficient yet to handle collections very efficiently. Apex is way more faster when it comes to handling and looping over collections. So if you are iterating over a list of 1,000 records, I would say do it in invocable action and just process the result, send the result back to your flow, or do it in Apex completely. I'm a big fan of combining the two. So I use flow to kind of orchestrate the logic, but Apex to do the heavy lifting and then give the control back to the flow.
Got it, man. Thank you.
But yeah, specifically talking, it can be anything, but this is one of the major issues that I have seen, that for specific to flows where you have those kind of issues. Okay, we have one more question. Hi Narendar, is it possible to use in operator in get records? Yeah, so this is unfortunately not possible, but I have created a what do we call Apex action, and I'll put the link in the chat moment. It's basically an invocable action that you can use in your flow to do the in operator call, where you specify the list of IDs. Moment. It's my GitHub.
In another scenario, so sometimes, right, if you want to launch a flow, right, launch a flow from a click of a button from the record, right? So if you're launching the flow from the actions, local actions, right, then the flow gets the record ID. But if you want to launch the same flow from the related list, right, then it's not getting the parent record ID. So we have to, use the Visualforce page, and from Visualforce page to, pass the record ID to the flow. Is Salesforce, coming up with, do you have any other better option here, or?
Yeah, so for related list, you can actually call the flow from a URL instead of calling it from as a quick action. And then you would be able to pass the ID as a record ID. So there are different ways to call the flow. If you do it via quick action, then you simply create a record ID variable, which gets automatically populated with the ID of current record. But for related list, what you can do is call the flow with the URL and then send in the parameter as the ID.
Okay.
You can explore if it suffices your use case. But yeah, it's one of the ways you can work around this.
Okay, I think I don't know whether we gave it a try, but I think it didn't work. That's the reason actually we picked a Visualforce page, and then and then we also used the Aura component to make it work in the Lightning. because when I directly call the flow from the Visual Force Price, right, it said that, okay, it doesn't support in the Lightning or something. That's the reason we also introduced our component in between. So it's like, from the related list to Visual Force Page to our component, and then our component, finally the flow. That's how,
Yeah,
we design.
let me share something for that as well, because I'm assuming one use case that I can think of what might not be working is if you want to pass in the list of selected records.
No, just we just want to create a related list record, but not using the standard new button, but we want to overwrite with the flow, the different.
Yeah. In that case, you should be able to send the ID. It's weird if you are not able to.
I'll give it a try
It
using
doesn't
visual
work, then
option.
doesn't work.
Not
I
that,
haven't-
then sorry, go ahead.
No, well, no worries.
All right. So yeah, lots of good discussions, and yeah, thanks, Narendra. It's a really good use case for putting something asynchronous and taking advantage. So if you have any questions, yeah, feel free to reach Narendra on LinkedIn or Twitter. So let's, I guess there are 18 folks here, so let's try to draw at least 4 of the certifications vouchers using wheel of names. So let me switch to my screen. All right. Okay. So let me know if your name is not there, because I pulled out all the names checked in and who are right now.
Yeah, you may want to remove my name. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
My name is not there.
Manoj, my name is also not there.
So Nagesh, who's not there?
Mahesh.
Yeah, my name is Parthiban, also not there.
Okay. So Mahesh, what else?
Parthiban. PV.
PV, right? Okay.
Yes.
All right. So, okay. So I hope everyone's name is here, and we'll give a spin. The first certification voucher for $200 certification voucher. Okay, so Dhanush, right? Dhanush, are you there? Claim this. Are you still in the call?
Yeah, Manoj.
Okay, so I'll just take you out. And probably I'll put you somewhere in my list. Okay, so yeah, thanks, Dhanush. So I will send the instructions how to claim this after we draw rest of the things. Congrats for getting this voucher.
Yeah, thank you.
So let's go for the second one. Let's give another spin. Okay, Saurav. Saurav
Yes,
here.
yes, I'm here. Thank you.
Hey, Saurav, congratulations. So again, I'll send you instructions. I'll show you instructions how to get this little bit. And congrats on winning the voucher.
Thank you, Manoj.
Okay, so we still have 2 more to go. Let's give another spin. All right, Michelle. Hey, Michelle, you there?
Yes, I'm still here. Yay, thank you
Okay.
so much.
Yay, congrats.
Thank
Great,
you.
great. Yeah, it's a really good opportunity to get $200 certifications if you're trying something new.
Yeah, it's a great way to start a Saturday morning.
Yeah, let's put me your name. Okay. So we got 3 winners. Let's give one more.
Yeah,
Okay,
man.
Mahesh.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm here.
Okay,
Thanks,
glad
Manoj.
congrats and glad we put your name.
Yeah, thanks.
Okay, Mahesh. All right. So we got like so we got 4 of them. 3, 4. Okay. So let's give one more. So I'll drop Fry today, and then we'll stop there. Okay. So do we have Adrian? I don't see Adrian here. Here you can claim. Okay, we don't see Adrian here. There we go. 1, 2, 3. Okay, let's give another spin. I'll remove Adrian and give another spin. Come on, who's the last lucky winner? So Pooja, are you here, Pooja?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay,
Thank
great.
you.
All right, so we got 5 winners, Dhanush, Saurav, Michelle, Mahesh, and Pooja. Congratulations all of you. And thank you for being here. So real quick, I just want to go back to my slides and probably I'll show you my slide. Okay. Okay, so I need somewhere. So I'll stop recording and then probably